Hey guys, welcome to Careers Uncorked. This is your co-host Sid.
And this is your co-host Sharfuz.
At Careers Uncorked, we host some amazing guests and hear their incredible stories.
And we're super excited to have you join us today.
Hey, Sid.
everyone, how's it going? How's it going, Shafuz? How's your Wednesday?
It's good. Sid, it's been a great Wednesday, just work. But this has been like the highlight of my day. Just been waiting for our session today, man. I'm super pumped. Yeah. What about you?
I'm really excited too. Since I've met you, I think one of your most favorite word in the dictionary has been something that we're going to uncover today. So really excited for that. I don't know if anyone in the audience actually knows Shafuz's most used entrepreneurial term. Please comment that down in the comments. I'm excited to hear everyone's perspective, but he's really mentioned it a lot building up to this. So.
Yeah. I think I get criticized a lot for coding Y Combinator a lot. And just listening to their podcast and just coding all the things that they teach you. So it's a world I've been super crazy in love with for a while now, ever since I got into entrepreneurship. And that's why I'm super excited for today's session, because we're talking to this amazing company who graduated from Y Combinator. We're talking to the co-founder and CEO, Jack, whom I had the pleasure to meet last year. And, he's sort of been like one of the person who sort of gave me an insight into that Y Combinator world that I always wanted to learn more about, So he's been an amazing guy just to learn from and just hear about his adventure. So I've been super excited about this, bro.
Yeah, let's bring him on, man. I actually want to hear about his perspective about you too. I hope he shares the same mutual feeling.
I got him too much. He might be a little annoyed, but let's move on.
All right. Hey, Jack, how's it going?
What's up, y'all? Thanks for having me. And I can officially say I have not been annoyed whatsoever. I am flattered and talking about everything, startups, Y Combinator, anything.
Wow. Yeah, Shafuz usually doesn't hear too many positive things about him, so I think he's really excited for you to be here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jack. Especially I know it's you have a crazy schedule, so just thanks for just taking that time, and it's going to be really, really awesome. We have a lot of amazing, enthusiastic audience who wants to learn all about you, all about Kopa, all about YC. So Sid, let's kick it off.
Yeah, so let's start off, Jack. Let's do a quick introduction. Tell us who you are as a person, what you do, and what's Kopa like.
For sure, yeah. So I'm Jack. I am the CEO and one of the co-founders of Kopa. Kopa is a YC-backed company. We did Y Combinator about 1.5 years ago now. That actually started as my kind of thesis project during school. So I went to the University of Waterloo, rep in Canada, and studied engineering, had a lot of cooperative education terms, meaning a lot of internships. And between the three of us co-founders, we had 15 co-op terms. So we had to move 35 times in 5 years. And that was really the inspiration for Kopa about 5 years ago that we started working on it. And it's come a long way since. And we're now a fully remote company. Personally, I'm based in San Francisco usually. And that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Wow, that is so awesome to hear. I mean, it sounds like you really travel a lot. I am a consultant, so I used to travel before COVID happened, but you've definitely beat me on that number of journeys you've had to find your internships.
Yeah,
it's not a competition, I promise.
Jack, it's crazy because I read about it as well. It was Kopa was your initial school project, and now you're here. Dude, most people, including me, we fail our school projects, and you build a company out of it.
It's definitely tougher than I thought initially. The thought of a company just sounds really cool, and you look at Elon Musk, you're like, oh, I want to be like him, and then you start it, and it's challenging. So no, it's been a road to get here, but couldn't be happier.
Absolutely. So let's get started, Jack. So we're really curious about the beginning of Kopa, because every great startup has this origin journey and that's true inner inspiration. So what was the inspiration behind Kopa for you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I touched on it a bit, but essentially we moved a lot for those internships, graduating. Even once you graduate, you maybe still want to try different neighborhoods in a city, maybe try different cities even. So you just stay maybe like half a year in a city, a year, a couple of years. And, I mentioned we moved 35 times in 5 years. that actually was then 52 times in 7 years between the three of us co-founders. So, we just found that nothing really catered to our specific needs, wanting something for kind of like a monthly rental period, anywhere from, in our case, like 4 to 12 months. We saw Airbnb had the vacation stuff down. There's, places to go for longer term housing for like year long plus. But kind of the in between we saw was missing. And yeah, on top of that, we also didn't see anything helping us with roommates as well, at the same time. And then even any rental platforms that do exist seemed very transactional, like, not much of an experience. Like you move in and it just kind of ends. Even like usually the experience would end at just message landlord. So, we wanted to kind of change the way renting is done so that it was kind of more community driven. And I used to think community was like the cheesiest term ever. And it took me a while to like truly understand what it means. But now having moved to a number of places, I really get that it means like feeling like you belong there and have a group of people you can rely on. So now we help people find, the place to live, the people to live with, and even things to do and people to meet once they move in. So kind of the trifecta there that, ultimately trying to leave people off with a, happier, positive self. And so, yeah, that all originated from those co-op terms during university. And for our kind of final year engineering project, 5 years ago now, starting 5 years ago, we built that and presented it at the engineering symposium at Waterloo in March 2016. And then, took on full-time jobs, but decided to pursue it in our spare time, while doing those full-time jobs, and finally made it our full-time gig.
Wow, that sounds like quite the journey. That's actually really exciting, considering that you've been working on it for a number of years while you were in college.
Yeah,
that's a crazy story. So tell me this one thing. You've had co-founders with Kopa. What was some of the things that you were looking for in sort of building this team along with your co-founders? Like, were there skill sets that you were looking for that would complement your skill sets?
Man, that is one of the hardest things, forming the group of co-founders. That's like definitely one of the most common questions I get is, like, how do I find a great co-founder? The tough part is, like, my advice is kind of, it needs to happen organically. But then that sucks because it's like, well, but how do I make it happen organically? So you're kind of in this paradox a little bit because, some of those apps where you connect to find co-founders and stuff maybe could work. I honestly don't know. I don't know if there's been enough kind of like research to really show how many solid relationships form from that. I know it's worked for like dating, but for co-founders, I honestly got lucky. So Zach is a fellow University of Waterloo graduate. We met during one of our co-op terms, actually in Vancouver. We both were skiing and, just decided to start hanging out. And once I made it kind of my school project, he was interested in helping out and turned into co-founder. And then Courtney is our CPO, Chief of Product, while Zach is CTO, Technology. Courtney is just a phenomenal designer. And I met her at that full-time job I started at after graduating. So she joined, like 3.5 years ago, still right in the early days, and just got lucky that, she is like an incredibly talented designer, and we worked at the same company in San Francisco upon graduating from university. So yeah, we got lucky, honestly, but that is one of the toughest things.
Yeah, certainly. I can definitely agree with that.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I think that's remarkable because I think that's people struggle with that so many times, just finding the right team, and I think that's so much more important. I guess so. One thing that made me curious, like when I saw your website, you guys have that timeline that you and Courtney decided to quit the job and go full time. So I was curious, what was the signal for you guys that this is it? We want to go full time on this. What was the signal for you guys? Or if there was any?
Yeah, that's a kind of a fun story because personally, I knew I wanted to go full time at some point, but my goal was to really bootstrap the marketplace while working on it part time, so that ideally I could get it to a point that it could kind kind of pay for itself and be profitable by the time I went full-time on it. That definitely proved to be tougher than I originally had hoped. Marketplaces are very difficult to grow, and that's like one learning I had that I'm sure we'll touch on later. But the way we decided to go full-time was we applied to YC, got accepted for an interview, did the interview, and then got rejected. And so literally that night that we got rejected from YC, we kind of said, fuck it, let's just go full-time. And we don't need YC. And we thought that could have been a big reason why they didn't accept us, was that we were just part-time on it. And how serious could they take us if we're not taking it seriously enough to work on it full-time? So that was really that night the decision that we're going to quit our jobs and go full-time.
Wow, that's incredible for a lot of reasons, but especially because people would be demotivated. In most people, if they get rejected from YC, they'll be like, why are we doing this? And it seems like you guys got super motivated to do this. Like, you guys handled it really well.
Yeah, it's a good point. I guess we're lucky again that we're passionate about what we're doing, because that's a really good point, that rationally we should have been like, oh wow, well maybe we shouldn't work on this, but instead we had the opposite reaction.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible, man. Like, props to you guys. So that's a very unique story about that. So I think so Jack, we're super excited to take a deep dive on Kopa and learn a little bit more, especially because I don't know, Sid, like when you moved to Austin, right? So me and Sid, we both moved cities. We were in Rochester for college. I moved to Boston. Sid moved to Austin. My roommate and my housing search was insane. I had to go through 10, 12 different Facebook groups full of spams, full of posts that get drowned by random posts that's not relevant to me. So, and especially like the community part, because when you're leaving college, especially as a student myself, and you're moving to a new city, there's a lack of community, and it makes the moving so much harder, right? So, Sid, do you have any sort of a story like this when you were moving to Austin?
Yeah, I mean, didn't really go through a typical route. I kind of found my roommate in Nashville, and then we sort of took a U-Haul and drove across the country, drove all the way to Austin. But I'm very familiar with those Facebook groups. I think, honestly, they really suck. They have so many spammers. I see one post and then 25 comments about like, oh, check this out, reach out to this person, and just random stuff. So I can totally relate with your struggles, Shapuz.
Yeah. So Jack, excited to hear how does Kopa change it? Is it like that? We understand there's a marketplace, but how does Kopa make all these problems we face much, much easier for us students and other people in general?
Yeah. So, well, first I have had similar experiences too, right? Like we all tried using Craigslist essentially to find the place to live, and then the roommates, we would go to Facebook to try and find something. And Craigslist, that was before they even had a map. So similar to Facebook now, still no map. It's kind of insane that you have to find housing without a map even. And so, really, that was the struggle, was like these platforms that made it really difficult, and the housing and roommate portion were disjointed. You kind of had to find them separately. So that was the inspiration, was to bring those two together, so you can find both the place to live and the people to live with on Kopa. And the first version of the roommate finder we implemented was actually listing based. So we catered to people who would find the place to live first and then look for the people to live with. But we realized the more popular thing is for people to just find people to live with first, and maybe a place to live based on the size of that group you form. And yeah, Sid, I guess to touch on your point too, it's great when you can like organically find someone that's a perfect roommate. And I've had some of those situations. Obviously, not everyone can get lucky and like find that perfect fit. So trying to bring that online to, find, that the perfect matchup is what we're trying to do. And so after that first version of the roommate finder, we honestly just kind of like hid that functionality and made it a search in kind of the top nav now, where you can just search for housemates for any city. And then from there, the goal ultimately is, so right now you can form a compatible group, based on filtering by cleanliness, how much you smoke, like habits, neighborhoods you're looking to live in, blah, blah, blah. You can then start a group message, get the conversation going, group message however many people you want to see which group you like. And the goal from there is to then surface listings to say, okay, looks like you formed a group of 3. Here's some 3 bedrooms in Austin. Now that you have the group in Austin that you're looking for, that are a perfect fit. So that's kind of how Copa works, is really combining the two, and eventually, we'll also enable you to then find roommates based on a listing as well. So if you look at a 3-bedroom in Austin and you're like, oh, this is perfect, but I got to rent all the beds, I can't just rent one of them. Let me just find 2 people to live with. So enable kind of both directions of finding the place to live and the people to live with.
That's really cool. I like the sort of dual functionality of it, because oftentimes it's one or the other issue. It's usually difficult to either find the people to live with or the place without the people. So I'm glad that you sort of consider both those aspects. That's really awesome. We actually have a question from the audience that I'm just going to bring up here. So this is sort of touching upon what we spoke about a few minutes ago. Would you recommend building a startup part-time while working full-time to gain knowledge and experience, like the way you went through?
Oh man, that's a great question. It partially depends on your risk aversity. If you're a risk averse person, like you don't really want to take a huge risk, it helps doing it part-time first, because you can really just kind of see, how things play out, like how much traction this thing that you want to build gets. The downside is, then you probably are working pretty crazy hours, right? If you already had a 40-hour full-time week, suddenly now this is becoming at least like a 60-hour week, probably more. And if there's one thing I've learned from this whole journey so far, it's that, a work-life balance is really important. And some people scoff at the term work-life balance, like whatever you want to call it. Taking time to actually, have a life and not work is really important, because like many students, when I first started on this, like it was my life, right? This is like all I did. The first summer after graduating, I literally stayed in my room coding for 4 months straight. Like I barely saw the light of day. And I loved it, right? I'm a workaholic, so I enjoyed it. But I've realized, life is so much more than that, right? I used to idolize Elon, but now I still like him. He's doing great things. And like I want him to keep going on, but you gotta look at his happiness, right? Like he's divorced however many times, like barely seeing kids. Jeff Bezos and all of them, it's the same, right? So I've definitely realized having life is important. So, that being said, I'm not giving like a clear yes or no, do it part-time first. Personally, I liked doing it part-time so I could, actually try and see if we could bootstrap it to profitability even before, taking the leap to go full-time, and ultimately having to raise some money because we, weren't profitable yet. So in general, I would say, part-time is maybe the safer bet to start.
Gotcha. That really ties in well to my next question, which is sort of the current environment. We're in the middle of a pandemic. There's a lot happening in the industry, especially with things like people moving, travel, and also hospitality. How do you, what would you say, how is Copa dealing with the environment right now?
Yeah, COVID-19, that's happening. So it's definitely caused a shift for us. We initially were focused primarily on interns, co-op students, whatever you want to call it. That was kind of our bread and butter. And the first version of Copa, actually called Pad Piper, which was a joke on the show Silicon Valley, was really only for students. You had to even have a student email address to sign up at first. And I still, I think it's really good to focus on a niche, like Facebook did, right? They were only colleges before they expanded. But we ultimately, Courtney especially, brought that thought to the team, saying, why do we restrict this to students? Like there's so many more people that need this, why not open it up? So we did. But that being said, interns were still our primary renter pre-COVID. And we kind of saw a record number of bookings right leading up to the summer where there's a spike in internships. And then, those all got canceled because everyone had to go remote. So we've now shifted a lot more toward travel nurses that are still moving around, military personnel, construction workers, those types of renters that are still moving pretty consistently. And, ultimately trying to help digital nomads in general, right? Anyone that wants a place to live for a matter of months, a year, what have you.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think, especially because of the digital nomads, I feel like I feel like although you guys were definitely affected just because what you guys were doing, but I feel like it might also come back towards the shift that people don't want to stay in one place anymore, because there's, for like workers, like employees like us, like there's like work from home policy now, so you could be anywhere right now. So people can be becoming more adventurous now. So you guys might also see like a good positive trend there, work in favor.
That's a great point. Yeah. To actually touch on, where COVID will take us ultimately, I think it has been a catalyst toward, this more nomadic lifestyle that already has been growing in popularity. Now, I think it really, boosted that even more. People are going to still go back to offices. But yeah, I think people that were on the fence about doing the digital nomad life are now
more
digging in more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Jack, you mentioned this, and I definitely had to ask. I was super curious about this. So when I was like first started chatting with you, you guys were Pat Piper, and then you guys were Pharaohs, Go Pharaohs, if I'm not wrong, and now you're Kopa. So usually people are struggling to build one brand, but you guys have shifted brands. I even remember you guys were covered by TechCrunch and Y Combinator when you guys were in your previous names. So what was that like, just changing this brand, and what's the insights to like why did that really happen?
So it's this new really cool growth strategy where you just change your name a bunch. It's like the latest thing everyone's doing. I don't know. That is not the intention. I do not recommend changing your company name a bunch of times. The goal was to just change it once, right? We've been Pad Piper from the very beginning. We had some knowledgeable people tell us, you should change your name. You shouldn't be tied to a show on its last season. And to be fair, we do have a much bigger vision than just housing, and like Pad Piper only really says housing. So I was convinced, okay, sure, let's change. We then got unlucky on the one we changed to. We basically were between Pharos and Kopa, and Pharos just like didn't work out. So we ultimately went with Kopa, but we literally were between those two when trying to decide which one to change it to. And yeah, just picked the wrong one. We covered that after a few months, and yeah.
No, that's such a great story, and I guess it's just a short follow up there for others as well. What's a good signal? Like, what made you guys realize that wasn't the right identity for you guys? Was it like an internal kind of a thing, or other signals?
It's a good question. Personally, I would have kept Pad Piper. My co-founder Courtney wanted to change it, and she's like the head of product, so I definitely trust her above everything, right? Like that initially was a little tough for me. I had designed the first version of Pad Piper, which was like pretty minimal, but to then have a real designer come in and say, no, we should do it this way and that way and whatever, it can be a little tough at first when having designed it myself, where I'm like, oh, do I want to like give up that much, choice and whatnot? Happy I did, because she's brilliant and knows way better than me. And so it was similar with the name. I was like, you know what, you honestly know better. And we had a couple knowledgeable people tell us the same. One of our partners at Y Combinator, Dalton Caldwell, also recommended changing. And some people, when they're like pretty reputable, you're like, listen, you say it, it's done. So that was really the reason for changing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely that makes sense. And thanks for sharing the story. It's been
I actually just looked up Kopa and realized it's Simba's son. Is that what you named it by?
That's a good question. I didn't even talk about why we named it. We saw the same thing, we did the research before changing. We're like, okay, what are we up against? And yeah, we saw it was Simba's son. So I'm like, okay, I'm not worried about that. They honestly might do a movie about him. Like, I feel like they will, knowing Disney, they're going to try and squeeze money out of that thing.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting when they maybe have like a Kopa movie or something. Anyway, Kopa is actually, it translates to together. Okay. Don't ask me the language because it's totally random. It's Latvian. But, we had a tough time with naming. Anyone who's named a company knows the same. It like kind of comes down to domains and whatnot, which is annoying. And I was very anti doing a translation. But I'm happy we did because, it kind of is our North Star a little bit, like guides us to what we want to do, which is bring, renters together, renters and hosts together, not only for finding roommates and then the housing, but even once you move in, like bringing people together. Not the most appropriate during COVID because we're supposed to stay apart, but normal times, I think it's good to be together. And, the classic saying too, like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So that's the meaning behind it. That's
awesome. All right, Jack, I want to move on to our next segment, which is one of our favorite segments on the live stream. It's called Questions from William, sort of a rapid fire themed round. So I'll start us off with the first one, and then we sort of shuffle around, Shafuz and I. So the first one is, what is your hidden talent?
Oh my God. Okay, hidden talent. I definitely should have read this more closely beforehand. It's supposed to be rapid fire even. I'm going to say Halo. I'm really good at Halo.
All right, really good at Halo. Okay, cool. Jack, next one. Tell us something that not many people know about you.
I have driven across North America 11 times. I think I might have put that on my LinkedIn though, so maybe people do know that. But
I literally read that 30 minutes ago, Jack. It's on your LinkedIn.
That's true. I still think people who know me probably don't know that either. But yeah, like all those co-op terms, I just drove my car to each one, and they were all on the West Coast. So,
oh man,
11 times.
What car did you have? That's a good advertisement for it.
Pontiac Vibe, but I totaled it because I went skiing in BC at one point and hit some black ice at night and just rolled the car. And so, yeah, then a few of the last trips were in a Volkswagen GTI, which I'm a fan of. Good car.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. That's
awesome. All right, Jack, so you've traveled a lot. What is your favorite, or what is one of the travel destinations on your bucket list?
Oh, man. Okay, I crossed New Zealand off a couple of years ago, which was freaking amazing.
Middle Earth.
I'm going to say Japan and Norway. Let's put both of them in there. I've briefly done Japan, but both Japan and Norway, just like great people, well-run countries. I think some awesome stuff to see, especially, nature landscape wise. I'm like a get away from cities and people kind of person. So, Mount Fuji, like skiing both of those is definitely a bucket list item.
And we can find those locations on Kopa?
Eventually.
Okay.
Yeah, for someone who wants to be away from the city, you're trying to help renters get in the city, man.
It's a good point. We got to get more non-city listings soon. Yeah.
Cool. All right, Jack, next one. Favorite YC partner?
Oh, man.
By the way, this is live and people can view this after, so I would be careful.
No. You don't think we're going to email it to them as well?
It's got to be Dalton Caldwell. He was like our main partner that we had office hours with, so I can't say anyone else. It's got to be him.
I've seen a couple of videos from Dalton. Definitely a really cool guy. I've seen some of his YouTube videos. Quick note there. Adora Chong is actually from our alumni. She was from University of Rochester.
Nice.
Yeah.
Adora's great. Another partner. I just didn't end up having office hours with her, but she's top notch.
That's awesome. It's great to hear, man. That's it.
All right. So next up, what was the most memorable moment from Y Combinator?
I would actually say getting in was the most memorable, if that counts, because it was Halloween when we had the interview and then found out. And we were actually doing this small accelerator right before Y Combinator called WeFunder. WeFunder is a YC alumni as well. And they're kind of like Kickstarter for investing. And they basically put together a small accelerator. Like they called it YC in the early days. That was just 3 months long, like 25K or something. But they wanted to bring back the kind of early days of Y Combinator. And we were the first batch, and we were doing that when we found out we got in. And so we were actually recording like a podcast for WeFunder that they're putting together for the companies in that batch. So we were literally recording some audio for the podcast that we did every like week or two when we got the call. We even have the call recording, which we haven't released because I don't even know if YC would let us. But we happened to record us getting the call, not knowing if we're going to get rejected or accepted. This is our second time trying to get in. And it was a Halloween party at the WeFunder office, which also is a house. And so it was just like a crazy night. And we're like dressed up in costumes while we're doing this podcast recording and getting the call, and then like going downstairs to let the whole WeFunder crew know that we got into YC while wearing these ridiculous costumes. So that would be, I got to say that one, even though it's technically not during YC.
It's still it sounds like a great YC moment, man. So thanks for sharing that with us. And our last question, Jack, favorite co-host, Sid or Sharfuz? That's a thing that we do with our guests. We have vote going on, man.
It's definitely gonna have to be both.
Ouch. Okay.
Listen, I'm not picking favorites right here. Come on.
All right, so Jack just gave us a point each, so I guess he's being a tactical CEO, keeping everybody happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Keeping everyone happy.
Jack, thanks for taking that energetic break with us. Thanks for being such a great sport. And I think this takes us to a next segment that a lot of our audience would love to get an insight on. Is what's it like being a CEO? Like, how crazy is your life? And maybe if you want to also mention some of the hard challenges you have to deal with on a regular basis.
Let me first say any chief title is so meaningless at this stage, right? Like, we really only have C-level titles because you kind of have to for fundraising purposes and for certain reasons, people need to know roughly what's your realm. So I want to first say the whole CEO thing is so ridiculous. I honestly should just remove that from my LinkedIn even, because it's CEO of who? We're like a 10-person-ish company. What? But in terms of the actual role, it's honestly, it's pretty crazy. I was a software engineer or front-end engineer for the most part before this, and it was nice to kind of have that focus. I would code every day, and I could kind of know what I'm going to do week by week. I'll be coding. I don't know exactly what code, but I'll be coding. With CEO, you're just kind of doing everything that's needed, right? I used to say if I would say Courtney's the CPO, Zach CTO, I just do everything else. I buy toilet paper for them. My role, honestly, has taken on business development, sales, marketing, analytics, SEO, some coding still, just because I love it and try and do it when I can. General kind of management and leadership of meetings and whatnot, operations. So it just, can vary a lot, and it's tough. I would definitely say whoever is CEO or taking on that kind of role in the company, it takes quite a bit of planning and thought. And if you feel a little overwhelmed, not really knowing what you're going to do week by week, don't worry. That's just kind of how it goes with this role.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely makes sense. I think someone once told me that being a CEO kind of a figure is like drinking from a fire hose. So that definitely, it kind of sounds like that, the way you described it.
100%. Yeah. I also one quote that Elon made popular with starting a company is like chewing glass and staring into the abyss. Because it's a little harsh what he's saying, but it's worth taking into account, right? I think, especially as students and recent grads, your main inspiration for starting a company, not inspiration, but one thought you have is, you see how successful some companies have been. Instagram, WhatsApp, whatever, started a couple years earlier, got bought for over $1 billion and just blew up in growth and didn't even have to raise that much or spend that much on marketing to get there. And you just think, you kind of are biased by those successes, but that's just because you never read about the failures, right? There's 99% of them are failures, but no one writes about that in the news or podcasts or anything. So you kind of are biased towards seeing just the successes. So it's important to keep in mind, before starting a company, it's freaking tough. So just know that.
Yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely. That definitely makes sense. Yeah, and I totally agree. People are used to hearing the success stories and they don't see the other side of
Right.
it. And I'm glad you mentioned some of like that growth stuff, because I think one of my question was that I remember like last year, or I think maybe earlier in 2019, you guys were like in 2 or 3 cities when you guys are like a year ago, and now you guys have like what, 10 plus cities. I remember explicitly that you guys were not in Boston a few months ago, and now you guys have so many listings there. So what's been like a secret for you guys of just scaling at the growth you guys were? What was some of the things you guys did?
Yeah, we technically have over a dozen listings in over 60 US cities now, which is kind of exciting.
Wow.
And yeah, we actually didn't intend to grow to that many cities initially. Really, with COVID, that just kind of happened. Suddenly vacation stays were gone. So everyone that hosted vacation rentals had to suddenly find someone else to, help them pay their mortgage or keep their company alive.
Yeah.
So they just kind of started flocking toward the medium stays we do. So that's really how that happened. In terms of actually growing, I do recommend restricting it geographically. Like I think a proven strategy for any marketplace is to grow, one geography at a time, like nail down one city at a time. Maybe it's a more rural area, depends on what you're doing. But yeah, Lenny, I forget his last name, has some really good articles out there about marketplace growth. He, I think, was involved with growth at Airbnb, yeah, and then started writing some really good blogs about it, and has one like really solid kind of 4-part series about how to grow in the early days as a marketplace, and then the kind of growth stage after that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for that. We're gonna look it up and like share that with our audience as well. That's thanks for that recommendation.
Yeah, definitely. And on that note, I think one of the questions we have or had from the audience a little while ago was, how did you sort of differentiate yourself from Airbnb, especially in the early stages when you're a new company coming up?
Yeah, that's a good question. When we started, Airbnb wasn't really doing monthly stays. We knew they would, but our differentiation is that, they're really kind of a vacation platform and experience, and we are a renting platform and experience. And, we actually now support unfurnished listings even. And the goal is to then enable you to furnish it through Kopa if you wanted to. But we've seen a lot of folks coming our way, new grads coming to work at Amazon, for example. They actually want unfurnished places in a lot of cases. So I think the renting experience we saw really differed quite a bit. You also need roommates when you're renting, whereas your typical vacation kind of stay, really need roommates. Security deposits and leases are a more standard thing with renting. You want to see like your commute to work or school. There's just like the service fee structure even. We have much lower service fees. We just saw that like a lot kind of differed ultimately when you add it all up. The initial experience and kind of what you see might look the same, but when you kind of dive into it, the roommate aspect alone, it can be a differentiator. Yeah.
Gotcha. You guys don't charge a cleaning fee like Airbnb, do you?
We're going to make everything transparent. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
All right. So food's on to you.
Okay. Yeah. No. So I think so, Jack. I think it's the other interesting part that we do want to share with our audience is like about YC itself and a little bit from your experience there. So first of all, like from your experience, like what does YC look for in founders, and maybe what are some of the common things you have seen among your successful YC peers as well in the founders or in the founding team?
Ooh, okay. The one I would say, if I were to boil it down to one, is resourcefulness. So one of their questions in the application is like, how were you resourceful at one point in time? And it's worth keeping in mind, YC is an investor, kind of like anyone else, right? Like a VC. They are an investor, even though they are a lot more founder friendly and, kind of almost cater to themselves in a way that doesn't seem like an investor. They are, and they want a return on their money. So, they want to see that you can really grow whatever it is you're building to be a multi-billion-dollar company. And resourcefulness is, I think, a pretty good kind of leading indicator of founders, actually being able to make that happen. So yeah, some, like there's the classic Airbnb story of they sold cereal to like pay off their credit card debt, right?
Yeah.
I think things like that where, Brex like bought every billboard advertisement in the Bay Area basically to grow to where they are now. So it's things like that I think they want to see glimpses of that before when you apply.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And we even just had one comment saying that that was a question that every audience wanted to hear. So I'm glad I asked that question. My co-host skills are leveling up. I think yeah. So I think that takes me to the other side of this question. Like when you look at the application, right? What is that one common mistake you see? Because especially given that the deadline is approaching soon, what is the one common mistake you think people make when they're applying?
Yeah, one mistake, if I were to kind of boil it down to one, I would say they try and probably like write too much and don't really make it very clear exactly what they do. Yeah, I think in general, founders don't really want to say, I am X for Y, right? They don't want to say, I'm Uber for whatever, name something. Because you want to feel like your idea is authentic and like it's new and I'm not like this for that.
Yeah.
Everyone's this for that. Every single company that's ever existed, like it was built upon something else. Like no one like invented something out of thin air. They like put some things together essentially. And so in pretty much every case, you can say I am X for Y. And nowadays it's becoming a lot more popular just to say I am like Uber for Brazil, even like it can be geographic based. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I think trying to really just make it as clear as possible what you are, and even using that kind of way of describing your company, if you can, that's something YC promotes once you're in Y Combinator. But yeah, like don't like add just paragraphs and paragraphs of like we do this, but then we also do this, and then we eventually want to do this. If you just make it like the clearer you are, the kind of more confidence you give off in the application, and the easier it is for them to understand and like see exactly what you're describing, then they can be like, oh wow, yeah, I get that. That's awesome. I want to talk to this person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's such a I think like I was a part of the startup school program as well, like the online thing, and I think that was also one of the things I saw in the videos and stuff, like just try to be clear communication. So I'm glad to see that's also something you are emphasizing on as well. A little joke there. I think this last graduating class, I was following them, and I think our joke was that a lot of the companies were like Shopify for X. There were like a lot of Shopify for X kind of companies this last batch. So that was kind of funny. Yeah, so I think I guess, and one of the other exciting part about this YC is that we want to ask is, what was that experience like? I know there's a lot to talk about there, but if you want to summarize it, especially like who was Kopa / Pat Piper entering and who they were when they left YC. So how would you describe it?
Yeah, it was thrilling for sure. It's just, the environment you're in is really exciting. Going to YC every week to have office hours and dinner with all the founders is, really motivating and inspirational. Like you just like talking to people in the exact same boat is exciting. And I'm curious how like remote is going to go, because I hope that they can maintain that, sense of excitement. Who were we before and after? Honestly, we'd been around a decent while before YC. We had been working at part-time 2 years at that point. And we had a pretty established product, right? Like we had a good number of co-op students finding housing through Pad Piper before YC, and we're now just kind of trying to take it to the next level. So I wouldn't say we like went through some drastic change. Brex is another classic example of they came into YC with a completely different idea. They were going to do some VR thing, and then I think Dalton actually, I believe, was the main person who was telling them, no, you should actually do this, because they also had a financial background. So like during YC, they then decided to do it and like had beta customers by the end of it. So that's like a pretty, transformational experience. In our case, we learned a lot for sure, and kind of became more, I guess, professional by the end of it. But yeah, I wouldn't say we had some drastic transformation.
No, that's great to hear, and thanks for mentioning the break story as well. I feel like I guess different startups transform in their own ways, and they have their own adventures, have their own YC adventures. So that sounds pretty good. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing all the YC experience, Jack. Definitely appreciate it. I think we want to talk a little bit about the renting and the way you see it going on. Sid, you had some questions over there.
Yeah. So just quickly want to hear your perspective about the future of renting. So where do you think the industry is shifting towards, and how do you see Copa being part of that change?
Yeah, so we touched on it a bit, but I think this nomadic lifestyle is going to be a lot more popular, right? Technology even enables us to live more nomadic lives. We can still stay connected with friends and family back where we grew up, and feel like we are still there to a certain extent. And time zones are, I guess, really the only thing that are making it more difficult, but there's still plenty of places you can live that are within a reasonable time zone in a completely different part of the world. So yeah, I think we're shifting toward that nomadic lifestyle. I do hope renting also becomes a much more convenient experience. Like that's what we're trying to build, right? Is like you shouldn't have to sign a different lease with every different place you go. You shouldn't have to like pay rent in a completely different way each time, and especially use like checks and paper to pay. So we're trying to make kind of almost a standard lease that you could use and go anywhere in the world and live there for months at a time, a year maybe, and not even have to like sign or read a whole new lease when you go to that next place. Really trying to standardize that so it's a lot more transparent as well. You don't get caught in some little term that you didn't read in the lease. It's just going to be transparent and seamless. That's the goal.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
That's really exciting. Honestly, I feel like I've looked at that vision for a really long time. Being a consultant, I really enjoy traveling. So coming from that side, I think it really sounds really awesome. A question I have is in terms of the vision for the company, the growth, where do you foresee Copa itself in terms of how many people are you looking to have? Like, are you making it a unicorn? What's the plan?
That's a good question. We'll see where this world takes us. We're genuinely not doing this for the money. And I know a lot of founders will say that, and like, how can you know they're actually being serious? But I think maybe you can tell since this problem hits close to home for us, having moved so many times. Like we genuinely are trying to solve a problem we faced. So my goal personally is to actually charge as little as possible on the platform. I think I used to see successful companies as ones that kind of made the most money, had the biggest impact. But I now actually have changed my definition of success, and I now measure it by almost the impact you have divided by how much you charge your users, customers. So nonprofits in my mind are actually the most successful companies. Even if they don't help many people, they charge them nothing. Like that's amazing. And so I kind of hope we can get to that point where, we can actually like, instead of optimizing our take rate to be as high as possible, we could just make it as small as possible while still keeping Copa running, growing, providing a better and better experience. So yeah, I think, I don't know if that answers anything, but that's my take.
Yeah, I think Jack, that was a really great response. I love just how impactful, focused you guys are, especially, and I think it's really cool that you guys are solving a problem you guys personally faced. That's a great story always, and I think your vision of just like helping just Copa being that place where I don't have to like go through different leads, especially reading all these different documents, and I still have to pay by check for my rent. And I lost my checkbook the other day, and I had to order a checkbook just for this only one. It's just messed up. Like it just doesn't make sense. And I feel like especially like kids like our age and like the next generation, we will not like leases, just for 1 year being tied down to one place. The more flexibility there is, the better for us. So I guess as a user, I sort of vibe with the mission, and I think a lot of people do as well. So thanks for taking care of that, guys.
Anytime.
We appreciate that. No, yeah, absolutely. I think so, Jack, and I know I think we're a little way over time. We don't want to take too much of your time, but one thing we do have to ask is, what's your advice, especially for early stage founders, and especially with COVID? If you can share a little insight, like, is this a bad time to start a business, and how would you tell people what would you tell people from your experience?
Yeah, so raising money is definitely going to be tougher now. Any recession, people just aren't giving out money as freely. But that doesn't mean it's a bad time to start a company. If you have an idea that you are passionate about, that you think could have a positive impact, I think that's an important one. Go for it. I will say though, I think we need more smart people in the world tackling more important problems, right? I think too many smart people go into law and some things that like don't ultimately help grow society. They're still needed, and that's not to say don't become a lawyer or something like that. It's just really almost how governments are set up to a certain extent, that the smart people are needed there, but it's also just because there's more money to be made there. So if you are looking to start a company, I would say try and start one that you're not only passionate about, but you can say is like having a genuine positive impact. And maybe try not to build it just for the money you'll make or the fame or whatever. Maybe try and do it because when you're on your deathbed, eventually you'll look back on everything you did and say, you know what, I'm happy with that. I think people will remember me in a positive light.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's beautiful. I think, thanks for sharing that. I think that a lot of people would find that really inspiring, like just having that mindset. Yeah, so thanks a lot.
Anytime.
All right, so let's jump into a quick question from the audience, and then I think we're about ready to sort of wrap up. So one of the questions, I think this would be the last question we'll take on. And this actually speaks pretty well. So I read that blog from YC about you, Jack. I think it mentioned quite a few of your experiences that you had in different industries. So this question's all focused around that. Would you say it's appropriate to specialize in front-end development, or is it better to have work experience in multiple sort of different tech stacks that you could pull that in together when you're starting a business?
That is a good question. I lean towards saying full stack is more valuable, especially startups. I think like to hire full stack because then you could just own an entire new feature or improvement, and you don't have to rely on someone else, to another engineer, to be able to help that front end or back end person complete it. The tough part there is like you may have a different interest, right? You might prefer back end or front end. Personally, I prefer front end. So I don't really like doing a lot of the back end stuff. But that being said, I think it's still good to have full stack experience. And I did, have full stack from just building my own site or whatever. A lot of my internships and even full-time work did end up being front end specifically. But I think at least having some experience full stack to say you could do it is good. And then whichever one interests you most, just go all in, learn everything you can about it. And, in your spare time, build as much as you can. If you have like no work experience, the best thing you can do is to just build some projects online. So, people can see something that you made. Coding is like one of the coolest kind of careers you can have, because you can not only learn it for free online, but you also can actually get a job in it a lot easier than something else, without needing a formal education and without needing real work experience. You can actually go a long ways.
Yeah, absolutely. That was good side career advice for all the engineering folks. Definitely appreciate that, Jack. And it seems like you were able to like get the best of both worlds, like engineering, then building your own product and making an impact. So that sounds really awesome.
I'm lucky. Fortunate to be interested in something in demand.
That's really awesome to hear. And Jack, I have to mention from reading that blog again that I mentioned on YC, I think something you mentioned that really sort of struck a bell for me was when you said that your experience of having to work on something that's actually out there for the audience, for the end users, being able to see the work that you're putting in. I think that was a really sort of meaningful statement. And I believe you worked on the front end of Kopa as well. So is that what we see right now? Is that code that you've written?
Actually, yeah. I built the entire initial front end of Pad Piper, and since I've done less coding, but still I would say a majority of the front end code on the entire site I've built, which is kind of cool. We initially built it in Angular and have been switching it to React and are almost entirely React now. It's Google or Facebook, you pick whichever one.
That's literally amazing to hear. I'm glad to hear that. With that being said, Shafuz, I think we're ready to.
Yeah, Jack, thank you so much for taking the time. We really, really appreciate you from your crazy CEO life, just taking this time. I guess we could just wrap up with what are your overall thoughts and if anything else you would like to share about Kopa or about just for all the aspiring entrepreneurs who wants to follow wants to have a career like you and your co-founders have had so far. Any other thoughts?
Oh man, yeah. Hey, thanks for having me. Honestly, this was a blast, and you're both just amazing humans for even doing this, and yeah, I'm excited to continue staying connected. Yeah, folks out there, hit me with anything I can help with. I guess the last piece of advice I would say is, I personally felt quite guilty reaching out to someone for help that maybe was a founder and maybe their company is doing well. Don't feel guilty. Sure, they can tell you, sorry, I don't have time if they want, and don't take it personally, but they all got the same help to get to where they are. Everyone has to get that help from, I guess you could say, more experienced people or whatnot. So yeah, just reach out to people for help, like LinkedIn or whatever. When you request to connect with someone, just include a message to say who you are or something, though, so that otherwise it's not just another random request. Include some kind of message, but hit me with anything I can help with, and everyone else that you might want help from, don't be afraid to just reach out.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Jack, for that message. I just want to make a quick note that is not an error on Jack's URL for LinkedIn. That's actually his URL. It's called LinkedIn/in/great URL. I don't know how you got that, but it's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Yeah, and Jack, I think that was a really great ending message, especially with COVID and people are looking for so much help and resources. So thank you for sharing that with our audience. I think that was a really good, beautiful message for everyone to listen to. Those last few words. So yeah, Jack, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yep. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll catch you later.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks so much for watching, guys. Make sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing to receive a notification next time we post. Catch you next time.
Wow. Okay. Like this?
Oh my God.
Oh.
Oh my God.